Well, hello and
Sure.
welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Kitaabi, baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. My guest today is Balaji Vittal, National Award-winning author. He grew up in Kolkata and graduated from Jadavpur University. He has worked with leading organizations such as Wipro, Standard Chartered Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, and currently Concentrix. He's an avid follower of Indian cinema, which is very well reflected in his books. His first book, R.D. Burman, The Man, the Music, was given the first prize of the gold medal prize at the 59th National Film Award. So it's definitely an honor for me to have Balaji here. And Balaji, before we start, so my first question is, well, it is not at all uncommon for corporate executives to write a book. What made you choose this less traveled path of writing on cinema?
Well, I've been watching Hindi films and Bangla films right from a very young age. So obviously that kida grew on me, and even in school and college, Jadavpur University, I was part of the quizzing fraternity, and we used to discuss movies a lot of trivia gathering. There was a very strong quizzing culture those days. And in Calcutta, as you know, there is a culture of culture.
Yeah.
So that's grew on me, and as to participate in the quiz sessions and all that. So when it came to writing, you write on what comes naturally to you.
Right.
So Hindi films came naturally to me. So that was the one that was a topic of comfort. So I said, let me write something on that. So that's how it happened.
Right. So it's often said that, movies are a reflection of the society. Filme samaj ka aina hai, as we say. What's your take on that, and where do you see the role of villain in that so-called reflection of the society, the culture?
Absolutely. Cinema is nothing but a reflection of what's happening in the society, mirrors what happens in the society. It informs the society. Sometimes, the cause becomes the effect and vice versa. But either way, the two are closely linked. So obviously, if you look at the face of the hero also has been changing.
Right.
So obviously, face of the villain also has to change. Because if you look at the earliest villains, who were the villains in our society? In the 1930s, 40s, it was the British. But we could not show them explicitly on screen, because then those would be to censorship. So then we had to show it in a very veiled manner. But the British, and then in 1964, Hakikat came out, in which Chinese was shown as a villain because of the 1964 war. And then in 1971 came films like Prem Pujari and Hindustan Ki Kasam, where Pakistan became the villain because we had fought 2 wars with them. And so on. That's about the foreigner villain. Similarly, how smuggling evolved. Initially, you had those 8 to 10 man small thugs, black marketeers and all that. Then they became gold smugglers. Why? Because that's what was happening. And then came charas. Then came, other things, or the Bombay Dawn, the 80s, because Bombay was infested those days. It was like something like Chicago of the 1930s. So, practically, one can say that cinema mirrors the society, what happens there. And obviously, the book tried to capture that as well. The changing face of society, and therefore the changing face of villainy.
Absolutely. How do you see the role of villain emerging? I mean, we always had villains, and as you rightly mentioned, we had the Britishers, then with the landowners or the corrupt politicians, corrupt businessmen, and then in 70s and 80s it was the underworld, the smugglers, mafia, everyone. How do you see the role of villain changing, and especially in current times, do you see the role of villain kind of diminishing or somewhat different from the kind of villain we saw earlier?
Yeah. In addition to the types of villains that you mentioned, Abhishek, also there were the personal villains, the one-on-one, the cheat business partner, or the backstabbing friend, or the wife-snatching friend, or the cheating spouse, or even the psychotics, the mentally ill people, or the serial killers, and like obsessed young man like Shah Rukh Khan in Dar. Those are so. You've also had the very personal villains. I mean, they're not villains of the nation.
Yes.
They're not villains of the society. They are villains of the individual. So you've had that. How I see the villainy changing, it's already changed to a large extent in the last 20 years. Correct. Earlier, एक villain जो होता है, वो हर तरह की बुराई में होती है.
Yes.
Not only a thief, he's also a lutera. I mean, he's also a rapist. He's also a bad man. He also speaks very bad language, and he cannot sing, and everything. So So it's like either a pure white hero or a pure black villain. And the way the script is written, कि hero को जीतना ही है, villain को हारना ही है. Now, if you look at in the last 20 years, there are a lot of shades of grey that have emerged. You can call it situational villainy.
Yes.
That is where, we behave differently in different situations. So there are shades of grey in both the hero as well as the villain. And that's why it's making it more interesting. Yes. If you look at a film which I love to quote, which is Ankur Arora murder case, where K.K. Menon plays Dr. Asthana. He messes up. There is this 12-year-old kid who's come for an appendicitis operation. The kid's name is Ankur Arora. So then Dr. Asthana, who's a celebrity surgeon, and he's the face of the hospital, and he forgets to carry out a pre-operation sort of a stomach washing procedure or something. The child goes into coma and it dies. And then begins the elaborate cover-up of the whole mistake. And later he tries to justify it saying, I am God. Log admare halat mein aate hain, I save them.
Right.
God saved them, I save them. So he gets a chance to speak his heart out, saying, what was his justification of trying to do the elaborate cover-up that he did? I'm not saying that he's right, but the fact is, it's a very fair picture. You get to hear both sides of the story. For example, you never knew why Gabbar Singh behaved like that. You never knew why Mogambo behaved like that. Maybe there was a backstory. Right. Maybe Gabbar's parents had been killed by some other Thakur.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right.
But to backstory aa gaya na, then you start sympathizing with Gabbar.
Right. That's true.
वो नहीं हो सकता था. आजकल it's a fair story.
Absolutely.
That's how it's changing.
Most iconic dialogues, I would say, the most iconic personalities, if someone asks, I think 9 or 10 would talk about villains. The dialogues of Mogambo, Khush Hua, Kitne Aadmi The, and even in the case of the actors as well, if you ask which performance you remember most, many people say, oh, it was Mogambo, it was Gabbar Singh. In the 90s, it was Kantia, played by Danny, or the one in China Gate, Zakhira, I guess. I'm forgetting the exact name. Mere man ko bhaiya, main kutta kaat ke khaya dost. But they became very popular. So when do you think that the villains started becoming, which era, if you would like to mention, became so popular that they have, entered into the collective psyche of the society as a whole? Any particular era, 70s, 80s, you can think of?
No, in each era, if you look at it, if you look at Kane Singh in the 50s, right? People still try to hit his nose twitch and his pout.
Yes.
So he was the first corporatized villain.
Yes.
He would manage a team of gundas. He was not a gunda himself.
Right.
He had the look of an educated man. No one looked better in a dinner jacket than him. So he ran a gambling den, he ran a hotel, and behind which he carried out all those activities. He was not like a Jaggu or Dilawar or a Mac or a Shetty. They were the hit boys, hitmen they were the foot soldiers. He was the boss. To this day, people say, "Arey 50s, haan, Kane Singh."
Yeah.
Okay. And Pran ke sare role. If you look at Raka in Jis hai, right? So that role is people. You look at the picture, you say, "Boss, this is Pran and this is Raka from Jis Ganga Behti hai." And so in every era there have been few, but then when Ajit Saab came in as Teja in Zanjeer and as Shakal in Yadon Ki Baan, he brought a different finish to the whole thing. He can be out in the open, he can be partying with a policeman, and they couldn't do a shit to him because he was mainstream. He was running a business. He's saying, I'm a hotelier, I'm a businessman. पीछे स्मगलिंग चल रहा है, उसका एविडेंस लेके आओ, मुझे अरेस्ट करना तो करो. Right? That was the crossover line when the villain comes. See, dacoits always had to, they had to always hide and run from the police. Whereas this guy was out in the open. He said, "Come and catch me. Have a drink first."
Yes.
Right. So Teja, Shakal, then Kali Charan, Loin, जो कहता सारा शहर मुझे Loin के नाम से कहता है, and then Gabbar came. So 70s was the era where you had those 3 or 4 big iconic villains: Teja, Shakal, Kali Charan, Gabbar. Okay, and in 50s, of course, you had Suki Lala. But 70s turning point, 80s again, you had like Rama Shetty in Arthat. And then, of course, you had Mogambo, and then you had Anna in Parinda. 3 big characters. And 90s, you had Bhiku Matre in Satya. So 70s is when those big larger than life villains start coming out. I mean, thanks to writers like Javed Akhtar and those who create these villains.
I think that was an era wherein we saw the rise of the angry young man. And Diwar was an example which was somewhat reflective of the frustration of the society at the injustices. And they had a hero in the form of Amitabh Bachchan who would take up against the the villains. Interestingly, this was the era the most popular Hindi crime fiction author, Sonendra Mohan Pathak. His out of 300 books he wrote, the most popular ones are which are centered on the villain, the anti-hero concept of Vimal, one of his characters. And he says that out of all the books, Vimal has given me the most popularity and most fame. And he mentions in an interview, and it said, तो सर मतलब villain को शायद लोग ज़्यादा पसंद करते हैं, because you mentioned that 300 novels, but those 46 novels of the anti-hero, the villain with a conscience gave you the most fame. And
yeah. In fact, Sriram Raghavan, in his foreword, wrote that there is some part of hidden desire in us to become a villain.
Exactly.
Only thing holds us back is कहीं पकड़ा न जाए. अगर मैं पकड़ा न जाऊं, तो I would love to be a villain and have a heart-shaped bed and many telephones and many women and exotic liquor, that lifestyle. I don't have any rules to follow. वो hero को follow करना तो मुझे कुछ follow नहीं करना होता है. This is the way I want. I can do whatever I want. हाँ, एक बात है कि आखिरी सीन में पकड़ा न जाऊं. So there's a little bit of it because it's like a vicarious thing, the darkest desire in a deep depth of our hearts. We're seeing it on screen. That's how we connect.
Absolutely. So while talking about villains, where do you see, and as you mentioned other things, that villains are not the only ones who are branded as a smuggler or a terrorist or a landlord or someone like that. Even individuals. So we saw in like movies which are based on, say, the family dramas and all, we had villains, maybe women, cheating her husband, a man cheating his wife, or the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law who's kind of, breaking the family and all. Where do you, in this context, see the role of women as villains? Well, I'm sure we had less roles, but do you see the Bollywood has given enough space to women when it comes to the role of villains?
Absolutely. So if you read my book, I guess you've read it. Yeah. I have covered quite a few women negative characters. For example, Do Raste, Neela. Do Raste, she breaks up the house, right? Because that was the time when the transition was happening from a joint family to a nucleus family, and this Neela, she facilitates that.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you look at, Jai Santoshi Ma, the two daughters-in-law, किस तरह जुल्म ढाते हैं छोटी बहू पे, right? Which may be the precursor of all the Saas Bahu serials that happen nowadays. Right. So there are those family dramas, the Saas Bahu things, and then also the cheating wife, like Achanak, Gulzar Saab ki jo Achanak movie thi. She quietly carries on an affair with her husband's best friend. Right. So she's trying to cover एक झूठ को एक सच के ओट में छिपा के रखती है वो, right? Or take the film like Qatl, in which Rohini, played by Sarika, she takes advantage of her husband's blindness, carries on an affair with her. First she has an affair with both the men. She marries one of them and continues to sleep with the other, right? Or look at Simi Garewal's role in Kurz. Murders her husband on the day of the marriage, right? And so how ruthlessly she does it, just escape. Because see, if you look at it, she was basically a vamp of the bigger villain, Premnath, jo the, it's Juda, right? But
Premnath, I guess,
Premnath.
Yeah, Premnath.
But वैसे तो those sort of role could have been just a vamp, आके एक डांस करके चली गई, हीरो को seduce करके चली गई. But she got the prominence. सुभाष भाई ने इस रोल में उनको prominence दिया कि you're not just a vamp, you'll actually have to front end the whole thing and take on the role of the male villain out there. So look at how black the role was. और अंधाधुन में तब जो रोल करती है. So there have been quite a few roles, quite a few villain characters, and then there are the murdering husbands. The people who murder their husband. Right in Paying Guest, Shubha Ghote, she marries her, she murders her elderly husband. So ऐसे काफी सारे roles हैं, बहुत सारे दिल से. और Susanna, played by Priyanka Chopra in Saat Khoon Maaf, she murders six husbands. So what can get more scarier than that? So all those have been covered in the book. There's quite a few assortment of women villains, and I've tried to cover as many of those as I could. In the book, you can.
Yes, of course. So how do you see not just villains, but as such the Indian cinema as such change? Because you have covered basically the Indian cinema very widely in the book. How do you see it changing in an era wherein the focus seems to be more on, say, commercialization than the art? If you compare, say, the movies or the actors or the music and everything in 1970s, 80s, and today, do you think there's more focus on the ROI instead of the art? And if yes, how do you see it plans out in the future?
Unfortunately, yes. I think there is. See, when you put big money, you have to expect big returns. Right.
Absolutely.
When I mean, ultimately, the producer is putting his hard-earned money, right? So obviously, there's got to be social elements, and because remember, 80 or 85% of the audience are still the people who stand up and clap for the commercial stuff, the zingy stuff, the sexy stuff, things which speak to a very shallow instinct, things which appeal to our shallow sensibilities, right? A shallow sensitivity, I mean, those action scenes, or the skin show or whatever, you'll still have a majority, and they form the bulk of the audience. Now, if I say no, I'll focus on the top 10% of the discerning people, uske liye alag movie hai. You make the parallel for that. You don't need to put so much of money for that. So it is an ROI game. I would say what I'm seeing in the web series these days, it's mind-boggling. It's really interesting. Really, I was watching Scam 2003, then 92, then Fuzzy, then the Family Man. Look how nuanced the characters are. They keep you all the time, and they keep changing with situations. Right? It's beautiful. Without worrying about the commercial or the ROI, if a director could get the latitude to make the sort of roles he wants, then it can just work magic. I think I'm finding these web series more interesting these. Of course, I loved Afwah. I loved films like Afwah or Article 15, where there is pressure on you to make those 600, 700 crore, 500 crores. Right?
Oh, that's true.
I didn't feel like going and watching Gadar 2. I know it's going to be loud. I think I know what I would expect. I'd rather go and watch an Afwah. I'd rather go and watch Article 15 twice. Or Section 375. I think that's the way cinema has to go.
True. And I think, OTT, you rightly mentioned, I think Scam 92 was definitely, it was surprisingly very well, and I think it got due credit in the way people liked it. It's one of the highest rated web series on IMDb, and people really like the characters. And I was actually, surprised by the character. I didn't know many of them, almost none of them, Satish Kaushik ji, except one or two more actors, and it came as a surprise. And it was great to see so much of talent, which was, you can say, till that time unrecognized. Because, I mean,
absolutely.
Gujarati cinema, who heard those names? Now they became famous, but no one heard the names, and it was amazing, I must say.
It was.
So, okay. So, one who has researched on villains, who, as per you, is your favorite villain, and who is, you believe, the most underrated villain?
Okay, let me talk about the underrated villains that maybe didn't get the due credit. Raghavan in Aks. Okay. Prakash Mehra ki jo, Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra ki jo, Amitabh and the exchange personality. Raghavan in Aks. Sundar Yadav in Gangajal, played by Yashpal Sharma.
Oh yes.
Okay. And then Rakesh Asthana, Dr. Asthana in Ankur Arora murder case. Yeah. KK Menon, played by KK Menon. Yeah. So okay, Manoj Vajpayee ho gaya. I mean, Raghavan was played by Manoj Vajpayee, and Sundar Yadav was played by Yashpal Sharma, and this one was KK Menon. And there's a movie called Rahasya. Dr. Aarti, played by Tiska Chopra.
Okay.
Very good role. Excellent. She's scary.
Right.
Some of the underrated roles. And also, I would say there are quite a few. I mean, Amir Khan in 1947 Earth. Just that one single, just that one dialogue. No shorgul, no bandukbaji, kuch nahi, no dialogue, just that one line. And it changes the perception of the character. What we have watched for 1 hour, 45 minutes, it completely changes after that.
Absolutely.
So these are some of my favorite things. These are a few of my favorite things. There are others also.
Right.
There are others, but...
And if you have to choose one actor, say, out of all the iconic actors we had, who would you say all in all, this is the best one?
I think the vote has to go for Gabbar because he tried something so different.
Oh, yes.
It was where Salim Javed had something in mind, and this guy, Amjad Khan, was able to capture it so well, and he put his own inputs into it. And it became
And it was his
so.
first movie, I guess? It was
No, it was not his first. He had, as an adult role, he had acted in Hindustan Ki Qasam.
Okay.
Yeah, he plays the role of a Pakistani squadron leader, Amjad Kadalbash.
Oh, okay.
So actually, Chetan Anand were given him the break in an adult role. Before that, he had acted in Ab Dilli Dur Nahi in 1957. He had acted as a junior artist, and so this was actually his second movie.
Second movie. But I think I read somewhere he was not the original choice for Gabbar's role, and the role was supposed to be given to Danny. I'm not sure if that was true, but yeah, I think
true.
Yeah, but I think history was about to be made, and we had Amjad Khanji playing the role of Gabbar, and rest we all know is this history.
Because Danny had to go to Afghanistan to shoot for Dharmatma.
Okay. And that's how he got. And yeah, definitely we all know what happened after that. So yeah, about villains, and I wanted to know the way films are being made. So one thing is commercialization, of course. We just talk about talking more about ROI. With the kind of movies being made now, like we recently had this action-packed by Pathan by Shah Rukh Khan. But how do you see the role of villain changing? Is it diminishing? Will it further diminish in the future? Would we ever be back to the era of 80s, 90s, the typical villains wearing suit, coming in long cars and, making these deals with the underworld? And how do you see next 5-10 years? What would be the role of villains and what kind of roles?
Villain's role will not diminish because the more deadly the villain is, the hero looks that much.
Right.
If you had not had a villain like what Vijay Sethupathi played in Jawan, Shah Rukh Khan's role would not have been that enhanced.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Al Pacino's Scarface, you need me to make you look good. So I think scriptwriters are going to find out more innovative ways of conjuring up, different types of villains and put more investment into it and maybe create shades of gray. And I have no idea what they're going to do.
Right.
So, no, I think villain's role is what makes a hero a hero.
Oh, absolutely.
A villain,
absolutely. No one would care about the heroics and everything unless and there's an enemy who would care about what you did unless until you have someone against you are. That's true.
Unless it's a Barjatiya like movie, like Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, where it brings in a very different type of an audience. It's like a Saas Bahu serial in 3 hours.
Absolutely.
Right. Unless it is that sort of a movie.
Which again, I are less compared to those are exceptions. Yeah, they did extremely well. Of course, there's no doubt in that. But yeah, again, all in all, if we see
for example, I tell you what, Tu Jhooti Main Makkar. It's a completely Barjatiya sized movie, right? It's a completely Suraj Barjatiya movie, right? Now, those will coexist because how much of Pathan, Jawan, and Gadar 2 can you watch? How much of blood spilling can you watch?
That's true.
You'll need this well. That's why Tu Jhooti Main Makkar and Rocky or Rani did so well.
Yeah.
Right, so both will coexist. Maybe you won't have those hardcore villains out there. For example, you did have those antagonists with mild shades like Jaya Bhaduri, Jaya Bachchan. Right. She was not the sort of machine gun wielding villain, but she was the antagonist.
Absolutely.
So those sorts of movies will also exist, and you'll have villains there also of a softer variety.
Of the softer variety, that's true. So okay, so you wrote about villains. You also wrote about music. You wrote a book on songs. On RD2 great music legends, R.D. Burman, S.D. Burman. So would you like to tell a bit about, first of all, the experience about writing the books? Because unfortunately, both of them passed away long time back, both R.D. Burman and S.D. Burman. And how difficult was it to, research about them and, ended up writing a book?
Yeah, the first book was R.D. Burman, The Man, The Music, released in 2011.
Right.
My co-author and I, Bhattacharya and I, we had this sometime in 2008 and we started writing this book.
Yeah.
Now, he was my senior in college. Faiz was my
Okay.
senior in college. So he had started writing a little bit sometime in 93 or 94, but couldn't progress beyond that. So we picked up the strings again in 2008, and then we started interviewing a whole lot of people. Now, Pancham had passed away 94 January, and many of the musicians and all were still around that time. So we got into action immediately. So it was relatively easier. Hard work, back-breaking work, took a lot of travel to Mumbai and all that. But we were able to get the people, and they were very happy to talk about Pancham. All the musicians and directors and S.P. Balasubramaniam and everyone, Amit Kumar, they were Abhijit, everyone. They were very happy to talk about Panchamda and their associations. And such a book had never been written. It was the first of a kind.
Yes, absolutely.
So it was fun. It was relatively easier. S.D. Burman was far more difficult to research. Yeah, because he passed away in 75, and many of his associates also passed away, friends have also passed away.
Right.
There was another book he wrote which is called Gata Rahe Mera Dil, which is 50 songs, 50 iconic songs from 1936 till 1994. Because it takes years to make a classic, right? So it was an algorithm based. It had to cut across a cross section of music directors, singers, lyricists, filmmakers, actors, genre, type of music, and all that. It would cover everything: actors, heroines. So it took a little bit of engineering algorithm because both of us happened to be engineers, so we had to apply a bit of science, but then we wrote it from the heart. It was a scientific act, it was from the heart. In fact, all the books are straight from the heart. Even Pure Evil, let me tell you, it's not a Gyan book, it's pure Bollywood mainstream masala.
Yes.
So anyway, Gata Rahe Mera Dil was fun as well because you had to interview a lot of people, for example, the sons and the next generations of the people who sang those songs and all that. So that was, I would say every research takes time, takes effort, takes sincerity.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it works out. If you be at it, if you stick to it, if you're stubborn, if you're obstinate, it works.
It works. Absolutely. So how do you see, as you someone who wrote books on both S.D. Burman, how do you see the role of musicians? Because the way I look at it, they are the one who work behind the scenes. It's the actors, the villains, as you talk about, who are at the forefront. At times, even the singer, because when it comes to songs, the first thing which comes to mind is the singer who sang this. And then you talk about music and the lyricist. So how do you see the role of musicians, especially in Indian cinema, wherein I don't think we can imagine movies without good songs? Yeah. How do you see the role there in the industry?
See, I think we use musicians only to insert music albums inside movies. वही हो गया पिछले 20-25 साल में. It's become like movie there and you insert some albums, right? The singles which doesn't connect with the movie at all.
Exactly.
No, Kajrari became very famous, but it had no relevance to the film.
True.
अच्छा खासा movie जा रहा था, suddenly there's an interruption. Wait, break. Loo break, Gana, then the movie starts again.
True.
It doesn't work that.
It doesn't work that.
It's a pure interruption. Now, why do they have it? We know it because public ko chahiye, right? Okay. I think the music directors have a far bigger role to play in the background score.
Yes.
Background score is what lends color to the story, not the songs.
Absolutely.
We remember Wallace trilogy for the music, Ennio Morricone music, right? We remember James Bond for the signature tune.
Absolutely.
We remember for the background score.
Background score, true.
Right. So I think the filmmakers have to wake up and say that let's use them much better. Don't just put some screeching background noise. Let them understand the story and let them sort of create music which fits into the story because that will add to the color. In Sholay, for example, R.D. Burman music was the fifth dimension, apart from Jay, Viru, Gabbar, and Thakur.
Oh, very true.
Right. So I think that's where the role of a music director and the assistants and musicians come in out there. And put the musicians in a room and tell them to freak out, tell them the story, tell them to freak out. Dekho kaisa music nikalta hai. They'll be able to come out with those small things.
No, that's sorry. But I'm glad you pointed this out because as you mentioned about the songs, and yeah, it turns it again, we have to go back to the commercial aspect. You put songs because they have some commercial value, some item number or something or the other.
Distributor बोलेगा सर ऐसे तो मूवी नहीं चलेगा सर, एक आइटम डाली ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता, नहीं आएगा देखने.
And I think the first time I actually understood this fact that movies, the songs, music, everything was in sync with the overall story. Because I saw this in older movies, but unfortunately in today's movies that is certainly not the case. It's only
I
for
tell you what, even in older movies, I think I would say it's very rare that a song has blended into the movie. One example is the bhajan, which is Na Main Dhan Chahu Na Ratan Fir Kala Bazaar, right? Where it shows two women singing a bhajan and this guy is coming up the stairs and he's thinking about it. So it becomes part of the story, right? Otherwise, to a large extent, even in the older movies, it was just zabardasti ghusa diya.
Yeah, but even I would say they were more melodious and yeah, definitely. But I'm a fan of old Hindi movie songs.
Yeah.
And talking about the relation to the story, if you see Rajnikantha movie, so this song "Kai Baar Yun Hi Dekha Hai," jo man ki seema rekha hai, I think that was a perfect example how you explain a woman's psyche there completely in relation to the story. So she is with her old flame in Mumbai and she's thinking of this guy as well as his friend in Delhi. And thinking which is kiski preet bulaun, kiski preet, something like that. So much that music, the placing of the song, everything was so perfect, and I wondered why don't we have music and lyrics like these, and that in this in that time in the movie. I mean, it requires a lot of genius, I must say, to have this song and have this music and at the right time in the movie. And that's what, as I said, somewhat to an extent is definitely missing in today's movies. So
this song was there in Gata Rahe Mera Dil as one of the top 50 selection songs.
Yeah.
And the attached to there, we interviewed the lyricist Yogesh ji. Okay. Now, why is music not the same? The reason is the distribution reach. Pehle kaise hota tha? You have to go to a theater, watch the movie to listen to the song.
Yeah.
And then you wrote letters to All India Radio ki hamara ye gana bajaiye. And for the few people who could afford it, they could buy the records.
Absolutely.
Okay. But not everybody can afford it. And then cassettes came, low cost cassettes and even lower cost CDs. So distribution started improving.
Yes.
Then came your internet and mobile. Today, all your music is on your mobile and all the music is on your internet. So what becomes your distribution channel? The biggest distribution channel is the discotheques and pubs. वो गाना अगर वहां पे बजा or people are listening to it, that is your biggest distribution medium.
Absolutely.
Now in those places you can't have melody, you require beat. So instead of melody, beat has taken prominence. एक rhythm होना चाहिए, एक standard उसके ऊपर कोई भी गाना बजा दो, ट्यून बाद में आएगा, पहले वो beat बजाओ ताकि people go up and start dancing. Because if they listen, they will download those. ऐसे ही बढ़ता है ना, ऐसे ही तो होता है. It's the distribution medium that has changed the whole game.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. So coming to your books, you wrote about songs and musics. So I mean, it's a question about the future. What can we expect from you about your next book? Will it be related to Bollywood, or if Bollywood, any plans you have?
Yeah, it will be about Bollywood, and I'm talking to my publishers, HarperCollins, who have given me the opportunity all these years. I'm grateful to them. So something is getting worked out, and I'll share with you very, very soon on this. I'll be able to share with you.
Okay, that will be. I will definitely be looking forward to it.
Yeah. Because still under discussion, I can't disclose right now, but I definitely will.
But I mean, given the books you have written so far on very different specific themes, I'm sure it's going to be something which not just entertains but educates people about aspects which are not much there in the publishing world, if I see. And so similar question, do you think that the publishing industry is finally understanding the importance of Bollywood? And because we have seen in past 5-7 years many books coming out on actors, singers, many of the actors writing their autobiographies and all. So how do you see this trend, and what is the future?
Yeah, future looks bright, because obviously I think the realization has happened in the last 10 years that movie is not just something to watch and come back home and forget about it. There is a lot of study. I mean, it merits a lot of study and a lot of discussion around how the movie was made and who the actors and all that. So that is fast catching up, but that's why I see a whole lot of books coming out now. I think this trend is changing in the right direction. It's changing for the better.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah.
So that's I remember.
Which also means that research has to be very good. flimsy research nahi chale.
Absolutely.
Most of the information is on internet already.
Absolutely. I remember I was having an interaction with Satyarth Nayak, who wrote a book on Shri Devi, and therein we discussed that they gave a book on Anand Bakshi, and I think that one of the important things is that the role of a lyricist was somehow underappreciated. And
Correct.
finally, we have a book so that people can actually read and understand about the lyricist, because as I said, it's usually the singer and then the musician, and after that, who wrote the lyrics. It's
Correct.
usually gets some notice, but of course they have a very, very important, just like a dialogue writer, for example, we say dialogue delivery was great, but hey, someone else wrote those dialogues which suited it. So great. I think just one more question. What advice would you like to give to aspiring writers?
Read. And watch. If you're going to write about films, don't think of what you're going to write when you watch a film. Just watch a film to enjoy it and to let it get absorbed within you.
Right.
Let the DNA seep through and become part of you. Right. So just carry on, and the writing apne aap aa jayega. It'll happen, because once it gets embedded in your mind and becomes part of your DNA, when you start writing, the ideas will come. It'll come with effort, but first read.
Of course. And I think whatever works the similar way for you, because you are a movie buff, you watch a lot of movies, which is very well reflected, as I said, in your books. And it is then that you thought about writing. So any particular author you followed, any particular genre you used to read before you decided to write a book?
No, see, I started watching Bollywood movies in the age of 3.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, I thought I'm going to write a book on Bollywood. Right. So and I've been listening to R.D. Burman music ever since. I don't know since when. So that time, obviously, I had no idea I'm going to write a book on him or S.D. Burman or his composers or writer. So वो एक बात होती है, बचपन से आना चाहिए. It has to start very early in life, right? So that's why I say, when you write, pick up something you're comfortable with, that you have picked up early in your life, not something you learned in the last 2 years, right? So look at what interest you had and what got you really excited and gave you the mojo from the earliest time as far back as you can remember. Can be cooking, can be just anything about observing around you, can be about monuments you have observed or whatever. That's your best chance, right? And on that, go deeper into it. So when I started writing the book on R.D. Burman, it was a little bit easier for me to go into it. And it was easier for me to get into pure evil and get to all the villains. Of course, I watched 300 movies and interviewed over 55 people. Right. But the fact is, the seeds were sown long back, not in the last 7 years.
Of course.
Yeah. And go look, pick your comfort zone. Look deep within yourself.
No, I completely agree. I think that's some definitely great food for thought. So let me just quickly check all those who are watching. If you have any questions you want to ask Balaji, please write in the comment box, and I will take it up. Any questions, guys, please write in the comment box. And Balaji, one last comment from me. I think it was great interacting with you today, but one thing is left. I'm still to, get your signature on the books. So whenever we get a chance to meet, I will definitely.
When I come to Delhi, I'll definitely meet you and sign there. And in the meantime, you can tell the audience to also check up my website, www.balajivittal.com. I'm also a columnist.
Yes.
I write for leading publications, so you can check out that in the website.
And this is Balaji's latest book. And as I said at the beginning, it's not just a book on villains. It's in a way history of Bollywood. It's a kind of encyclopedia on the villains. So all those who have some interest, definitely they all should, read this book. You'll thoroughly enjoy reading this one. So let me just quickly check if you have no questions. So I think we can definitely call it a day now. Once again, Balaji, it was a pleasure interacting with you.
Same here.
And wish you all the best for your future books.
Thanks so much. Thanks for calling. It was great interacting with you, Abhishek. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining in.